The year is 58 BC. The Roman Republic stands at the height of its power, but also on the brink of chaos. Its legions dominate the Mediterranean. Yet inside Rome, corruption, ambition, and rivalry are tearing the Republic apart. And in the middle of this storm stands one man who will change the course of Roman history forever: Gaius Julius Caesar. What began as a campaign to secure Rome's northern borders would turn into one of the most extraordinary military conquests in history: the Gallic Wars. But this wasn't just a war of swords and shields. It was a story of politics, propaganda, and power, a struggle that would transform Caesar from a mere general into the most powerful man in Rome, and set the stage for the fall of the Republic itself. At the start of the Gallic Wars, Caesar was not yet the legendary figure he would become. He was ambitious, cunning, and already a skilled politician, but he needed something more: a legacy of conquest that would outshine his rivals, Pompey and Crassus. The Senate had given him command over 3 provinces: Cisalpine Gaul, Illyricum, and Transalpine Gaul. But beyond those provinces lay the vast and untamed lands of the Gauls, divided, proud and warlike tribes who controlled what is now France, Belgium, parts of Switzerland, and even northern Italy. To Rome, these tribes were both a threat and an opportunity. The spark came from the east. In 58 BC, a powerful tribe, called the Helvetii, decided to abandon their homeland in modern Switzerland and migrate westward through Roman territory to new lands in Gaul. Their movement, nearly 400,000 people strong, terrified Rome, a migrating nation of warriors, was not something the Republic could tolerate. And Caesar saw his chance. Claiming he was defending Roman allies, he marched north with his legions to confront them. When the Helvetii sent envoys to request safe passage, Caesar refused. He stalled them for days while secretly reinforcing his army, then suddenly struck. Near the Saône River, his legions caught the Helvetii mid-crossing and slaughtered one of their divisions. Days later, at the Battle of Bibracte, Caesar crushed the entire migrating tribe in a brutal engagement. The Helvetii were forced to return to their homeland, defeated and humiliated. And with that victory, Caesar had his first great triumph in Gaul. But the real challenge was yet to come. The victory over the Helvetii alarmed neighboring tribes, especially the Germanic king Ariovistus, who had crossed the Rhine with his warriors to claim lands in Gaul. To the Gauls, he was an invader. To Caesar, he was a perfect target. Claiming to defend Rome's allies once again, Caesar confronted Ariovistus near the Rhine. The Germanic warriors fought fiercely, but the Roman legions, disciplined and relentless, prevailed. Ariovistus barely escaped with his life, fleeing back across the river. In just one campaign season, Caesar had defeated both the Helvetii and the Germanic invaders. He was hailed as a hero by his soldiers and admired by the people of Rome. But among the Senate, suspicion grew. Some saw Caesar's victories not as defense but as expansion, an excuse to wage war and gain personal power. Still, with his popularity rising, Caesar pressed on. Over the next several years, Caesar embarked on one of the most ambitious military campaigns in ancient history. One by one, the Gallic tribes fell before the might of the Roman legions. In 57 BC, he turned his attention north to Belgica, where the fierce Belgae tribes had united against Rome. Caesar's intelligence network, which included spies and loyal Gallic allies, allowed him to anticipate their moves. He defeated them in a series of swift, brutal battles, culminating in the storming of fortified settlements across the region. By the end of the campaign, the Belgae were subdued, and Caesar had extended Roman control all the way to the English Channel. But Caesar's success depended on more than just his military genius. It was his ability to use propaganda that truly set him apart. Throughout the campaigns, he wrote detailed accounts of his wars, known as Commentari de Bello Gallico, the commentaries on the Gallic War. These writings were not just reports. They were masterpieces of self-promotion. Caesar portrayed himself as the protector of Rome, fighting barbarian aggression and bringing civilization to wild lands. Every victory he described made him seem not just successful but inevitable. By 56 BC, Gaul was mostly pacified on the surface, but rebellions simmered constantly. The Veneti, a powerful maritime tribe in northwest Gaul, rose up and challenged Roman authority. They controlled the seas with their strong wooden ships, and for the first time Caesar faced an enemy he could not reach easily by land. So he adapted. The Romans built a fleet from scratch, training their soldiers as sailors and ramming the Veneti ships in a daring naval battle off the coast of Brittany. When the Veneti were finally defeated, Caesar ordered their leaders executed and the survivors sold into slavery. It was a brutal message: defy Rome and you will be destroyed. But even as Caesar celebrated victory, a shadow loomed over the horizon. Across the Rhine, new Germanic tribes were gathering strength. The Usipetes and Tencteri, forced west by pressure from other tribes, tried to settle in Gaul. Caesar refused them entry and launched a devastating preemptive strike, annihilating their forces and driving survivors into the river to demonstrate Rome's power. He did something no Roman general had ever done before. He crossed the Rhine. The construction of the bridge over the Rhine remains one of the most extraordinary feats of Roman engineering. In just 10 days, Caesar's legions built a massive wooden bridge spanning the mighty river. He crossed into Germania, marched through enemy territory, and burned villages to show that Rome could strike anywhere. Then, having made his point, he marched back and destroyed the bridge. It was pure theater, military power as political propaganda, and it worked. The whole of Rome buzzed with talk of Caesar's daring. But Caesar wasn't done showing his reach. In 55 BC, he turned his gaze toward an island that had long intrigued the Romans, Britannia. The tribes there had supported rebels in Gaul, and Caesar decided to make an example. His first invasion was small and mostly symbolic. The Romans fought harsh weather and fierce resistance, but the campaign announced Rome's arrival to the island. The next year, Caesar returned with a larger force, securing hostages and establishing brief control before withdrawing. Though short-lived, his invasions of Britain made him a legend back home, the first Roman to ever set foot on the mysterious island. By 54 BC, Caesar's fame was unmatched, but so too was the unrest in Gaul. His conquests had unified the tribes not in peace but in resentment. Under the charismatic leadership of a young Arvernian noble named Vercingetorix, the Gauls rose up in a massive rebellion, the largest Caesar had ever faced. Vercingetorix was not just brave. He was a tactician who understood that fighting Rome head-on was suicide. Instead, he waged a scorched earth campaign, ordering villages burned and food supplies destroyed to starve the Roman legions. At first, the strategy worked. Caesar's forces struggled through a cold, starving winter. Rebellions broke out across the provinces. But Caesar was relentless. He marched through storms, crushed uprisings one by one, and hunted Vercingetorix with ferocious determination. When he finally caught him near the town of Gergovia, Caesar suffered a rare defeat, the only major setback of his Gallic campaign. The Roman assault on the fortified hilltop failed, and Caesar was forced to retreat. For the first time, the invincible general looked vulnerable, but the war was far from over. In 52 BC, Vercingetorix gathered a coalition of nearly every Gallic tribe to make a final stand against Rome. They fortified the stronghold of Alesia, perched atop a hill and surrounded by rivers and steep cliffs. Caesar arrived with over 50,000 men, but Vercingetorix's forces numbered more than 80,000 inside the fortress, with tens of thousands more expected to arrive as reinforcements. The situation was desperate. Any ordinary commander would have withdrawn. Caesar chose to build walls. In one of the most incredible sieges in ancient history, Caesar ordered his legions to construct a double line of fortifications, one facing inward to contain the besieged Gauls, and another facing outward to protect against the coming relief army. The result was a staggering 25-mile ring of trenches, towers, and wooden barricades. It was a fortress surrounding a fortress. When the Gallic relief army finally arrived, Caesar and his men found themselves trapped between two enemies, hundreds of thousands of warriors inside and outside their walls. For days, the siege raged in chaos. The Gauls attacked relentlessly from both directions. The Romans, exhausted but disciplined, held firm. When the outer line finally began to break, Caesar personally rode into battle, rallying his men with his red cloak visible across the field. The counterattack was devastating. The Gallic relief army was routed, and the defenders of Alesia, seeing their allies destroyed, surrendered. Vercingetorix, realizing the end had come, rode out of the gates in full armor, circled Caesar's camp, and dismounted at the general's feet. Without a word, he laid down his weapons. The rebellion was crushed, The fall of Alesia marked the end of organized resistance in Gaul. Over the next year, Caesar mopped up the remaining pockets of defiance, and by 50 BC all of Gaul was under Roman control. The conquest was brutal. By Caesar's own account, over 1 million Gauls were killed and another 1 million enslaved. But to the Romans it was a triumph beyond imagination. Caesar had turned a restless frontier into a province that would enrich Rome for centuries. When Caesar returned to his legions, they adored him as a living god. His men had fought with him through rain, snow, and blood, and they were rewarded handsomely. But back in Rome, the political situation had shifted. Pompey, once his ally, now saw him as a rival. The Senate, fearing his popularity and power, demanded that Caesar disband his army and return home as a private citizen. Caesar knew that stepping into Rome without his legions meant ruin, so he made a choice that would change history forever. In January of 49 BC, Caesar crossed the Rubicon River, the boundary between his province and Italy, with a single legion. It was an act of open rebellion. According to legend, as he crossed, he uttered the words, "Alea iacta est," the die is cast. The Gallic Wars had made Caesar a conqueror. Now they would make him a dictator. But even as the civil war erupted and the Republic fell into chaos, the legacy of the Gallic campaigns remained. Caesar's conquest had expanded Rome's territory by nearly half, secured its northern frontier, and poured immense wealth into its coffers. Gaul would become one of the most Romanized provinces in the empire, giving rise centuries later to France itself. Yet for all its glory, the Gallic Wars were a double-edged sword. They brought Rome immense power, but also unleashed the ambitions that destroyed the Republic. The same legions that conquered Gaul would soon march on Rome itself. The same man who claimed to defend the Republic would bring about its end. In the end, Caesar's victories in Gaul were not just a story of conquest, but of transformation. They turned a Roman general into a legend, a frontier into a province, and a republic into an empire. And it all began with one man's relentless pursuit of greatness in the wild lands beyond the Alps. Even now, more than 2,000 years later, the Gallic Wars remain a testament to Caesar's genius and his ambition. His words, written in the third person to glorify his deeds, still echo through history. All Gaul is divided into 3 parts. But what he really divided was Rome itself, between those who worshipped him and those who feared what he had become. And in the end, that division would prove fatal, because when Caesar crossed into Gaul, he conquered the tribes. But when he crossed the Rubicon, he conquered Rome.